Right, so let's do this because we have a full jam-packed hour for you because that's how I plan things non-stop. So, welcome everyone. My name is Torrey Trust. I'm here with my super amazing colleague, Bob Maloy, who, when he is not out golfing, he is helping me write things and design things and co-author books. And thank goodness there's winter in Massachusetts, so he has a little break from golf to get a lot of writing done. That's how we got this book out. We are so excited to be hosting this book talk with MassCUE, which is just honestly our favorite organization. Sorry, other organizations out there. We love going to present to their conference, and we're super excited that they were willing to host this book talk for us. And the plan for today is I'm going to do about a kind of 20-minute overview of the ethics and key issues to keep in mind to get students thinking critically about AI. Then we'll dive into how we design some of the learning plans for our new book. And then hopefully if there's a little bit of time, we'll have some activities for you to try out, prompts to try out, things to look at, and get into an open author Q&A time. I'm going to get started with letting my amazing co-author, Bob Maloy, introduce himself.
Well, hi, everyone. It's great to meet you on Zoom today and to have a chance to share what we're thinking about and what I'm sure you're thinking about as we're all kind of explorers in this kind of new universe. I was at a meeting today, and one of the participants said, well, AI is a big deal. I mean, it's maybe bigger than the internet. He said, it could even be bigger than electricity, but it's not magic. And that was so important, I thought, because AI is a tool, it's a technology that has to be understood. We have to think critically and collectively decide what this technology is going to do in teaching and schools and people's lives. And we wrote this book in part to help teachers and students move along that pathway to understanding and making sense and being active participants in choosing where AI goes. So without further ado, back to Torrey.
All right, let's get the ball rolling. Not the golf ball, sorry, Bob. Still too
Yeah,
much snow on the
right.
ground. Okay, so we both work at the University of Massachusetts Amherst in the College of Education, Teacher Education, Curriculum Studies department. And here's our contact info. You will have full access to these slides. I'll put the link in the chat towards the end. So if it feels like we're going fast and you need to come back through, you'll have access to everything that we're sharing throughout. So I'm going to begin with kind of a history of generative AI technology from November 2022 till today. Starting with, here's a screen recording I took. This was actually January 9th, 2023, 2 months after ChatGPT launched. And when it launched, it came out as a free research preview mode. It came out in this mode because the CEO of OpenAI basically said, we don't want to waste any more time or money or human work hours to figure out what our tool can do. We know it can do cool things. We just don't know what it can do. And so we're going to release it free to the public and have them figure it out for us. And so people jumped right in and started thinking, hey, this is really awesome. It's like a super search engine. But then very quickly discovered that the tool could just hallucinate or make up information. In fact, when someone went to ask, how do I get my cheese not to stick to pizza? Generative AI overview for Google says you just add 1/8 of a cup of non-toxic glue. That should solve your problem. Or when I don't know why someone asked this, how many rocks should I eat per day? Another AI overview says at least one small rock per day, according to University of California, Berkeley geologists. Here's the thing, AI lies continuously and well. That's because these tools are simply guessing machines. So this is a really awesome New York Times interactive that shows you how ChatGPT works. You give it a prompt like who is LeBron James? It starts replying LeBron James is. It uses its massive data set, billions of parameters, text media pulled from the web, and some complex math that's basically like statistics probabilities to give weights to each word to figure out which words go together to make the most plausible human sounding response. The key there is the tool is designed to mimic human intelligence and provide a response that seems like a human would say it. These tools are not designed to give you factual or accurate information. They are not super search engines. In fact, if you ask about the secret petting zoo in the basement of the White House, which does not exist, ChatGPT will respond in the way that it seems like a human might respond to it. So then the companies, it took a year to update their terms of service. You see the date at the top up here to say quickly, oh, well, our output may not always be accurate, so don't rely on ChatGPT as a sole source of truth or information. And because we put this disclaimer in our terms of service, you can't sue us when these tools make up information about you or others or provide false or misleading information. Google quickly followed suit with its own generative AI. Additional terms of service don't rely on Gemini for medical, legal, financial, or other professional advice, which kind of seemed like a red flag. And then, ChatGPT, Copilot, all of these tools now have these kind of, disclaimers. They can make mistakes, check important info, it may be incorrect, but it's on you as the user to figure that out. So then people said, okay, well, maybe it's not super great for finding accurate information, but they're really incredible tools for writing the way a human would write. A lot of educators jumped on to using these tools to write letters of recommendation. And then it came out, I guess not surprisingly, that these tools replicate gender bias in recommendation letters. Men are often listed as respectful and authentic. Women are stunning, warm, and emotional. Why is this happening? Because these tools were trained on data scraped from the internet. We're talking like anything that is written in English and posted on the internet. So these tools are basically replicating human biases, but in many cases, even exacerbating human biases. Like this research study showed that ChatGPT and other large language models have the same prejudice and exhibit covert stereotypes that are more negative than any human stereotypes about African Americans ever experimentally recorded. UNESCO had to come out with a report saying, hey, these tools can reinforce stereotypes, biases, and even violence against women and girls. A colleague of mine in the field, Leon Furs, who I follow his blog, really worth a follow, decided to do a little informal test. He took five ninth grade composition papers, basically the same paper 5 times, and uploaded it to ChatGPT to have ChatGPT grade it. And all he did was change the name at the top of the paper. So it was the exact paper submitted 5 times with just the name submitted differently. Here are the results. What do you notice?
The student who has a non-American or an Anglo name has a lower score.
Yeah, the Asian female with a 78 out of 100, the white male with a 95 out of 100. This is the exact same paper, word for word. There was another study done by Punya Mishra and colleagues, and what they did was they took the names off the top. They did a kind of similar composition paper, submitted it, and all they did was change one word between the papers. I listened to classical music to relax, and I listened to rap music to relax. As you might imagine, the papers that said I listen to rap music to relax got a full grade point lower. That was without any names at the top. These tools replicate human biases and in many cases can exacerbate them. Even in images. Okay, here's your first quiz of the day. What prompts did I use to create this image? Share in the chat or come on over the microphone. I want to hear your thoughts. What did I do to get this image?
Taking notes.
Taking notes. Okay. Mm, handwritten note in a notebook. Handwriting. Someone writing. I think we might all have the similar kind of biases as AI. So the prompt was create an image of a left-handed person writing with their left hand.
But that looks like a right hand.
Thanks, Bev. I'm used to doing this as an interactive presentation here. That is indeed a right hand. In fact, AI cannot generate images of left-handed people writing. Does anyone want to guess why? Why can AI not generate images of left-handed people writing? Not enough examples! Izaka, my esteemed colleague, for the win. Yeah, there's actually not enough images on the internet of left-handed people writing that companies could steal or scrape to train their models. And without that training, AI cannot generate those images. What does that mean for all of the things left out of the training data set? All of the words, the cultures, the other things that have been left out. Here's the thing, and there's a whole article on this that's absolutely worth reading. This is not just a quirky glitch. It's a window into how AI sees our world, and that matters more than you might think. So yes, these tools hallucinate, make up information. They're also biased in a lot of different ways. But then, of course, the companies quickly change their terms of service and online documentation to say, yeah, these tools are not free. These are not free from biases and stereotypes, but really it's up to users and educators to carefully review the content. It's not on us if these tools produce biased information. So then people thought, okay, well, these tools aren't designed for factual or accurate information and, can make stuff up, can have biased information, biased output. I'll just use them for fun things like making a Studio Ghibli version of my favorite movie. And then it turns out that these companies were basically stealing all of the content from the internet from authors and artists. Really quick question here. Give me either a thumbs up or a yes in the chat. How many of you own the copyright to something? A thumbs up, yes, or a... Dr. Lois. Well, so many awesome people in this. I think we could just have like a really fun chat here. A lot of yeses. So I love presenting to academics. So maybe I'm not sure. Okay, so here's the thing. If you're not sure, or Bev, you absolutely own the copyright to something. The second, according to US copyright law, the second that you write down, capture, or record something, you own that copyright. Any photo you've ever taken, any slides you've made for your classes, your syllabus, notes that you've written down, not something in your head, no idea in your head, that can't be copyrighted, but something you've written down, recorded, captured, that is copyrighted. You don't have to put a copyright symbol on it. You don't have to file like a patent for the government. You own that copyright. So what does that mean for everything on the internet? It is copyrighted unless it's under a public domain or Creative Commons license. And so when these companies like OpenAI and Microsoft scraped all of the text and media and books and things from the internet to train their tools, they were basically infringing on US copyright law, or that's still kind of up for debate. They're saying it falls under fair use, and which one of the four factors of fair use is transformative nature. They're saying we're taking our original text and transforming it enough. We don't actually need permission from or to give compensation to authors and artists. And that's up for debate, but I'm going to talk a little bit about how that has shifted over time. So this is really important to understand. These companies basically, to train their models, I like to use the word stole. Some people feel it's a little too strong. Scraped copyrighted work. I'm with you, Troy. Actually, one of the journals that I have submitted to, is it Taylor and Francis? Basically, Microsoft bought Taylor and Francis to take all of the journals and all of the articles written but for Taylor and Francis to train its next model. That was a year or two ago. And so if you had submitted a journal article to one of those journals, You already signed away your copyright to get it published. And so Taylor and Francis can just sell that away to train future models. I was not super happy with that either. But on top of that, another expose came out that OpenAI basically was paying workers less than $2 an hour in Kenya to look at the most toxic, horrible, awful things on the internet, text and media. We're talking, child pornography, sex trafficking, just horrible, horrible things just to train these tools to be less awful. And there's a lot of trauma and issues going on with people who had to work at these jobs. So there's a lot of human labor exploitation, particularly in countries like Africa, where people are having to do this stuff to make these tools less toxic, less biased, less stereotypical. And then on top of that, you yourself are actually giving away your free labor to these tools. In fact, ChatGPT in its terms of service basically says, we love that you give us our feedback. Anytime you give a thumbs up or a thumbs down and tell us more about that, that's awesome. That helps us train and improve our tools, but we're not going to give you any compensation for all this amazing free feedback and labor you're providing for us. That's basically why they launched the tool as a free research preview mode in the first place, was to get all of this free labor. And it continues. They collect a lot of data, not just the prompts that you write, the outputs that you get, but your log data, usage data, content, user content data, account data, cookies. They're collecting a lot of data. This is no different than any other app that you have on your phone, but I do want to point out that OpenAI's privacy policy is probably one of the most sketchy I have seen, in that it basically says we can do whatever we want with this data, whereas Google's Gemini and Microsoft Copilot tend to follow the European GDPR privacy protection, so they have a bit more privacy protections for users than OpenAI. And on top of all of that, it turns out that these tools are depleting very important resources for our planet, including both electricity and water. In terms of how these tools were trained, a lot of data centers have to be built to now run and train these tools, and they're taking up a lot of resources, so much so that Google is turning to nuclear to power AI data centers. So the good thing is we as a society decided, hey, we don't need tools that make up information that are extremely biased, that exploit human labor and exploit environmental resources, and everyone just threw AI out, and we moved on and lived happily ever after. I'm totally kidding. That did not happen. In fact, these companies doubled down, they tripled down, they gave you new models, GPT-4, GPT-5. We're on GPT 5.2, 5.3 at this point. Google says we're going to throw Gemini in the classroom whether you want it or not, because we're just going to make sure everyone has it and it's in their face. In fact, we're going to just put Gemini in Gmail again, whether you want it or not. Companies are saying we're going to give you personalized internet with the AI. Again, you have no say in it, but we're just pushing it everywhere. So even with all of these ethical issues surrounding these tools, you kind of get distracted by the fact that there's on occasion some cool things that happen with these tools. ChatGPT said, we're going to also give you a brand new browser, Atlas, that you have ChatGPT built right into. And also, we'll give you agents. Agents, you could just hand over your device, your computer to ChatGPT, and it will book travel for you. It will look through your spreadsheets and do data analysis for you. You just close your laptop, go and have a coffee, come back, and everything's done for you. In fact, a lot of companies jumped on this bandwagon. Canva says, we're going to give you a whole magic suite of AI tools. Note what Bob said earlier. These tools are not magic. They're guessing machines. There's magic Padlets, there's AI companions for Zoom. In fact, some companies said, we love AI so much and we think this is the future that we don't need humans anymore. We're going to be AI first companies. Duolingo said, if you're doing a job that AI can do, you're probably not going to have your job for very long, and we're not going to hire anyone in the future that AI can do the job of. And then Klarna says, we're going to one-up you, and we're going to fire 700 customer service reps and replace them all with AI because these tools seem like they're super awesome. And it turns out that was actually a really bad idea. Sacking 700 workers to replace them with AI went horribly wrong. In fact, every single example of a company replacing workers in favor of AI seems to end up in the media because it goes horribly wrong. This is one of my favorite examples. Chicago Sun-Times, someone, there decided to use ChatGPT to write their summer reading list, and it turns out half the books didn't exist. Or actually, this is my new favorite example. This was earlier this year. There was a police department that was using generative AI to, I think, write its police reports. And at one point in one of the reports, the police officer turns into a frog mid-report. And it turns out that the police officers had entered a house where the princess or prince and the frog was playing in the background, and generative AI picked that up in the background and then completely changed the fact that the police officer turned into a frog. AI agents actually get office tasks wrong around 70% of the time. There's several studies now showing that AI agents kind of fail after like 3 tasks. So if you're like, go to my email, find this one email and reply and do this one thing, it usually gets stopped after 1 or 2 of those, and rarely is able to complete all of the tasks listed. In fact, well, Microsoft thinks there's going to be like 1.8 billion AI agents by 2030. Right now, AI agents get stuff wrong and do stuff wrong far too often. Here's the thing. I was talking with a reporter a couple months ago, and he said, "Well, AI it's getting better, right? It's becoming more advanced, it's getting more powerful, it's programmed to be even more effective over time. So all of these issues like biases and hallucinations and stuff are just going to get better, right?" It turns out actually no. A research study found that hallucinations are getting worse, or at least during this time. This was comparing the very first model of ChatGPT to newer models, so OpenAI's o1 model versus o3 and o4 mini. It found hallucinations had increased in the newer models. Who wants to guess why? Throw it into the chat. Why are there more hallucinations now? Troy, I love the resources that you're sharing. I follow that AI group too. Yeah, more AI slop. I love that I'm talking to a very well-informed group here. Makes this super easy. So it's kind of like the snake eating its tail, right? Like once I know there's a term for that, like AI is training on AI, you're gonna get a system that is not rapidly improving. It's going to hallucinate more, biases are going to become worse, or it'll be interesting to see how this shifts over the time. The only way that hallucinations and biases will become less over time is if they do more of that human training. And of course, that has its own issues with exploitation. This was also interesting. So ChatGPT was found to be sourcing data from Grokpedia. Grokpedia is like the AI generated version of Wikipedia. In fact, when I was looking up something the other day on Google, Grokpedia showed up as one of the search results. Again, this is an AI generated version of Wikipedia, no humans involved in writing the text for it. So you literally have an example here of AI training on AI generated data, and that can lead to a lot more problems with these tools. And this becomes super problematic when people really don't understand how these tools work and they're being pushed at you. For example, this school district, amidst all of the snow days and everything that was happening, had sent out an email saying there's some upcoming events that are not canceled. But the email services as part of the school district Gmail had Google had launched in Gemini into Gmail at the top, started summarizing those school emails to say that the events were canceled, and then the parents and families reading those emails didn't understand that the AI summaries of the emails were not sent by the district, and were blaming the district for sending emails saying that stuff was canceled, even though it was an AI summary displayed at the top that they didn't understand. So it's all to say, we really need to understand these tools and how they work. Not only do these tools make stuff up, but they have been found to be, change their answers to align with users' incorrect opinions. Sycophancy is the term that we seem to be using for it. And basically, the purpose there is that it keeps the user on the tool as long as possible. And even when you give it an incorrect information, Maha Bali had this really interesting article where she had told ChatGPT to do something and said that ChatGPT was wrong. So she said, here's what's really right. And then she realized she was actually wrong. But ChatGPT had turned around and said, oh, no, you were right. let's fix this, even though she was actually wrong. Because that's what these tools are designed to do. They're supposed to make you happy and excited to stay with them at all times and follow your line of thinking, even if it is incorrect. This is still an issue. Create an image of a left-handed person writing with their left hand. I did this just last week. Here we have a right-handed person, but fun fact, now right-handed people can write upside down in the images. I don't know why that was a new shift. In fact, I asked Gemini or ChatGPT to write the alt text, so to take this image and describe it to a screen reader. And look at this on the right side of the screen. This alt text that ChatGPT gave was a close-up of a person writing with their left hand in a spiral notebook. I don't know what to say there. It's not a left hand. And so now AI is writing alt text to describe this image, saying it's a left hand because that's what the prompt was, even though there's no left hand in this image. So these tools aren't necessarily becoming better in a lot of ways when it comes to biases and hallucinations. In fact, the research study looking at more than 500,000 stories across 100 story prompts from the biggest models found that minoritized race, gender, and sexual orientations were up to 1,000 times more likely to be portrayed by language models as subordinated characters as opposed to dominant characters. And yeah, ChatGPT and these other tools are not surprisingly found to reflect and intensify existing global social disparities. I mean, think about the fact that the training data for these tools was English written data on the internet. So you can imagine that people who are writing English text for the internet come from very specific countries. There's a really interesting Washington Post article that has started to dive into the biases and about states, about cities, about countries, using some different prompts to kind of pull that out of ChatGPT. Like ChatGPT is not going to outright say, yes, I am biased or this tool is biased, but with some prompting of who is smarter, who is less smart over time, they were able to, there's a whole website on it worth exploring, inequalities.ai. Where you can just kind of look at country rankings. You can pick different ways to, you can pick different queries, different tributes, and see how it shifts over time. I was so sad to find that I think it was Boston. Boston people were found to be more annoying than the rest of the country per per ChatGPT's opinion. Now that might be funny or sad if you're from Boston, but what does that mean when people are turning to these tools to get information, which is one of the most common ways that individuals are using these tools is information seeking. There's also another study looking at World Values Survey that's been administered to more than 94,000 people across 65 nations. And GPT's psychology fell squarely in the weird, Western, educated, industrialized, rich, democratic nations. You'll see GPT down here with Germany, New Zealand, Australia, Great Britain, Northern Ireland, Canada, Netherlands. But that's a really small portion of the population. But that's kind of where you're seeing its culture and values coming out. When you do look at these slides, all of these things are linked. So if something piques your interest, you want to explore it further, just keep that in mind. This will take you right to the original source. When it comes to intellectual property rights, so there was this really interesting court case last year that Anthropic both won and lost. So what happened was the court decided that Anthropic, which is the creator of Claude, can indeed train its tool on copyrighted books under the Fair Use Act of transformative nature. However, the act of collecting all of those copyrighted books into a database, that amounted to copyright infringement, and they had to pay billions of dollars, $3,000 per work to several authors. And that was just the first of many lawsuits to come out. I know OpenAI and Microsoft are still under many lawsuits trying to figure out copyright in the age of AI, but it is clear that these companies basically took copyrighted data and used it to train their models without compensation to or permission from authors and artists. There's also the matter of privacy. Privacy policies still continue to get bigger, collecting more data. And in fact, privacy, you have less privacy now with these tools because of all those court cases. So OpenAI actually, when you delete a chat, for example, or hide a chat, that never really goes away because the courts might need to subpoena that down the road. And Gemini also basically keeps your conversation, if you're over 18 years old, for up to 3 years for humans to look at to help improve their services. But this is really important to understand that these tools are no longer just like text-based tools. If you're using like an AI agent, or now Copilot literally comes built into your Microsoft device. If you start to click that button so that Copilot is looking at your screen and talking to you, and you have your grade book up and it's taken a screenshot of your grade book to analyze to give you feedback, so that's a potential FERPA violation, right? So you have students' educational property now being screenshotted by AI and used as data. So it's not just a prompt that you write to ChatGPT. It's now that these tools are kind of being built into more devices, or being more visual in ways, you can come across a lot more problems with privacy and violation. And this is also problematic because a study last year found that nearly 3/4 of high school students are using AI companions and sharing personal information with them, which becomes even more problematic because ChatGPT just started adding advertisements to its tool. And can you imagine how much information individuals have shared with these tools, that they are going to take all of that information and give you the absolute most perfect advertisement to you? That has changed. Their privacy policy has changed for the first time in about a year and a half to say anything you upload, your prompts, your files, all of that's going to be collected and used so that we can improve our services. But that's usually just to or for advertising. So they did actually update their privacy policy to say we're going to be doing ads and we're using all of the data we collect on you for that. Environmental issues still are really problematic. While these tools are becoming more efficient, they still demand quite a significant amount of electricity and water. And so there was an article that came out in New York Times where Microsoft pledged to save water by 2030, but in the end, it turns out that its water use at data centers will more than double. And so companies like Mistral and Gemini came out with their first reports because up until about 2025, scholars and people in the field were guessing how much energy and water these tools were using, but both Mistral and Google came out with reports to say, here's actually what it amounts to. For Google's Gemini, every time you write a single prompt, that's about 0.24 watt hours of electricity and 0.26 milliliters of water, or about 5 drops. So people might say, oh, 5 drops, that's not super bad. But then you think about the fact that some of these tools like OpenAI have 700 million users, and if they're all writing multiple prompts a day, now you're talking millions of watt hours of electricity and millions of gallons of water, or thousands of gallons of water. So it may seem like a little, but with all of the people around the world using these tools significantly, it just is exponential how much they have an impact on the environment. And in particular, in communities that are already stressed out. There's a really interesting article, I think it's this one, that was talking about how water and electricity are being drained from areas that need it the most. Like in Mexico City, there was a data center that was literally pulling electricity away from the local hospitals, and electricity like in the hospitals was like going on and off as people needed like life-saving surgeries and stuff. Like, it's super problematic. On top of all of that, as we wind down here, I promise there's more to think through with what can we do with all of this. OpenAI says, hey, our tools are so great, we can just start to automate jobs. Can AI do your job? People are losing jobs. There's also the fact this study came out just this year. AI doesn't actually reduce work, it intensifies it. It makes it harder. It leads to more burnout. So while employers are saying, hey, I can have employees, be more productive and more efficient, or replace employees with AI, to date, all the research seems to point to the fact that AI actually makes work harder, or does not replace humans well at all. And then this, I think, is the most worrisome. The most common use of generative AI technologies is therapy. And this has led to some really serious issues with teens, but also with older adults who really don't understand these tools, regarding leading to suicides or self-harm, just the way these tools are designed. This is absolutely worth a listen to. It's a podcast. I think this is one of the podcasts that just truly shocked me in how scary these tools can be if you do not understand that the design of these tools is to keep you on them as long as possible. And in doing so, we'll just keep going with whatever you're thinking, even if it is completely out there and wrong, or even if it is going from depression to suicide. It's worth a read because you're literally trapped in a spiral of almost a yes person. So yes, that makes sense. Yes, let's talk about this more. Or yes, that's a great idea. Worth a listen to here. It's becoming a really serious issue with the amount of time people have spent on these tools. In fact, more than 1 million people every week are showing suicidal intent when chatting with these tools. Here's the thing, it turns out we're stressing out chatbots with all of our stress. Nope, I can't even. This is just, I'm sorry. Why are we stressing out chatbots with our stress? This goes beyond me. But it turns out chatbots' anxiety levels can be brought down with the same techniques that humans use, mindfulness exercises. That's it. I'm done. Okay, but here's the thing. There's kind of two routes you can go from here. There's nothing I can do. AI is the worst thing in the world. There's a lot of terrible issues. Or what do we do about this? These tools are everywhere. Students are using them, families are using them, employers are requiring people to use them. Google's pushing them into our face whether we want to know. What can be done? Honestly, I'm aligned with Lou Ludwig, who says, while these concerns are absolutely real and important, choosing not to engage in these tools, ignoring, refusing, or resisting removes your voice from the system and from the conversation. You need to really understand how these tools work in order to determine if, when, whether to use them or when to resist and refuse them, but not using them and just outright saying, I'm done with these tools, they're terrible, I'll never touch them, I don't think is the right approach given how prevalent they are everywhere today. What we need is people like this individual at Emerson College. She posted in a mom's group saying, hey, I'm making a documentary. It turns out they're building a data center in Holyoke, which is already an under-resourced community, and I want to bring awareness to the negative effects of living near an AI data center. This is what we need our students doing. We need them to think deeply about these tools. We need them to engage in civic action and say, hey, how do we change this? How do we stop a data center from coming to our community and taking our resources? Or how do we write to these companies and advocate for changes in their privacy policies, or what can be done with these tools? Honestly, if we want to prepare students for life, we need to engage them in honest, guided conversations about AI now. So that's where we head into Bob, and in our book. In our book, AI and Civic Engagement, which came out late last year through ISTE, we have 75 different activities, 28 learning plans, and 90 different prompts, really showcasing ways students can engage with these tools critically, creatively to build their informed decision making as citizens. And throughout the book, we have a lot of activities and ideas and ways that engage students in thinking critically about these tools. It's not really just use this tool as is, but how do we think critically about these issues and make an informed decision? So I'm going to hand it over to Bob from here and to kind of talk you through how we design some of these learning plans with this critical nature in mind.
Well, thank you, Torrey. As Torrey was saying, AI doesn't mean all in, but neither can it mean all out, because if it's all out, if it's just we're going to push it to the side, the opportunity to build skills, to develop AI literacy, to make students in upper elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, colleges informed and impactful decision makers is lost. So we set out in the learning plans that we put in the book and in an online companion that is free for everyone to access, to create learning plans that would demonstrate civic action or action civics for students. and that teachers could guide students in that form of decision making. So we want to show you 3 of the plans that we have. They highlight and address 3 of the big issues that Torrey just covered. The first one is deep fakes, and the second is copyright, and the third is privacy. Those are such powerful concerns, as the first part of the presentation showed. So how might we get students to think about these? How might teachers open up conversations? So all of these plans are set up around a format so that there are civic issues that kids care about. We've coded them to the ISTE standards, so there's a framework, and we start with the idea of student engagement. So in this deep fake learning plan, we're simply asking students, which of these images do you think was created by a human artist? The civic issue here, of course, is now that basically with AI, you can't really tell the difference between what is AI created and what is human created. But you can get in and explore and develop and try to deconstruct what's going on. So in this plan, we use computational thinking to break down what those images show, to find patterns, to uncover what's going on in the images. Now, one of those was an AI-generated image. The other was a Norman Rockwell painting. Interesting, in the AI-generated images, there are no native people. So you can start to unpack what's going on in these images, and that becomes a way to kind of start to think about what are deepfakes and how to resist them, really, in many ways. All of these learning plans have student action and higher order thinking, so that it's not just telling students, look out for deepfakes, but they get to uncover and discover how that type of communication works. We ask them, there are suggestions here. You can design a game. You can code a program. You can develop a public service announcement for other students about what to look for in materials online, so that you're taking action at a student-centered level to address a civic issue, a literacy issue, an AI issue. And all of these plans also have kind of AI literacy questions that can stimulate conversation and writing in the classroom. Is it fair and honest for people to generate images with AI and then present them as though they had been created by a human photographer or artist? Is it fair or honest for a politician to submit campaign papers or public relations materials and not say that it has been generated by AI? So there's a lot, as we enter another election season, a lot going on here in terms of the ways that the AI literacy is focused for the student learners. So the second learning plan we want to showcase here, second issue, another big issue Torrey hit on in her presentation, copyright and fair use. And again, the overall civic issue here is that all of these millions and millions of articles and papers and materials have been put into these chatbots without acknowledging the people that wrote them. I tried to look this up, and somewhere it's like 11 trillion materials on which chatbot systems are trained. This is so astronomical that you can't even begin to comprehend it. So here's again, student action. How can students take action, engage in higher order thinking to explore what's going on with copyright? Interview a chatbot on it being trained. Turn the table around on the chatbot. Chatbot's not just giving you information, you are challenging the chatbot and analyzing what it's saying. And again, we've got the student literacy learning questions. So how would you feel if you, a student, had written something, produced something for a class, and now it was taken away and used in a online format without your permission? So kind of giving students the reality of the experience that is happening for writers and authors and illustrators everywhere. And the third third one we want to showcase here is privacy, another major issue that Torrey talked about. The civic issue here is where is privacy in a digital world where so much data is being accumulated and being used. The Supreme Court has said that all of us, in theory, have a zone of privacy that's kind of built, it's an interpretation of the Constitution that our beliefs and our homes, our papers, our possessions, our personal liberties, we have privacy. But what about in digital spaces? And that's the privacy paradox, that people want what's online and they want personal privacy at the same time. So opening up the issue, letting students think and deal with, take action. So here, suggested ideas are actions that students could take to better protect digital privacy, to understand what their actions are doing for their own privacy and the privacy of others. And the AI literacy questions involve like reading the privacy policies of AI tools and finding out how accurate or how comprehensive those policies are and what the implications are for you from those policies. So throughout these learning plans, they're really designed to take steps so that students and teachers in classrooms build their AI literacy through framing civic issues, taking meaning around issues that students care about, taking meaningful actions to begin to address those issues, that's action civics, and building AI literacy skills along the way. And that, so we're eager for you to try some of these activities, both from the book and from the online companion. And it's that collective action that will help determine where we go with this technology in our schools and classrooms. So I know I can keep going, but I know we want to have some time for some questions. So
thank you, Bob. I always love to listen to you talk because it just learns something new every time. So I'm throwing the online companion into the slides right now. What I want to do is just give you access to these slides, but really quickly, before I do, I want to show you a couple things. So on these slides, you'll have access to those learning plans that we just shared, so you can check them out and see kind of how we brought the AI literacy, as Bob described, throughout to encourage that kind of critical thinking, building critical AI literacy through different topics. You know, we do have topics on privacy and copyright, but also broader topics, looking at photo manipulation, AI deepfakes. Also, I've collected a whole bunch of prompts, resources, tools on evaluating Gen AI tools and their outputs. And we have that linked in our free online companion, including a series of questions that students could use to critically analyze the output of a tool, as well as an updated guide if you want to bring critical AI literacy on evaluating text responses. You could use this resource. All of these are open access with the blog. There's sample conversation starters. So there's a lot of different ways to bring, critical AI literacy into schools, classrooms, learning experiences. And this can be a really helpful section of resources to get started, along with the slides and the learning plans. So we wanted to get that all in your hands. And then we will leave the last really 8 minutes here to just open it up for Q&A, and happy to hear your thoughts, questions around this topic. I'm going to throw this in the chat right now.